How's it going, everybody? Alright, first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you who have followed this series from the beginning. Whether you know it or not, it's been almost 2.5 years, if not a little bit longer. And that's quite a while. I've had some of you actually say, man, like, I was trying to find the comment and give him a shout out, but there was a guy that said, man, you're the only person that can make an hour or 2-hour video on YouTube and actually get me to sit down and relax to watch this. So that's pretty cool. Also, shout out to Ashton Vanderslice. He says, hey, it looks absolutely insane. Love how informative your videos are. They've helped me a lot on my build. You know, keep it up and thank you for that. So thank you as well for watching, and I'm glad that it helps. That's really, really what I wanted. Because I've told some people before, even talking in person, I'm like, you know, the only way this build is going to be manageable is if someone's got metal fabrication, paint and body, fiberglass and composite skills, and then of course basic mechanical, but you know, you want to know how to customize stuff and kind of do it right. If you have less than all of those skills, it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get through this thing. But let's see, I'm going to look at another comment. This is kind of fun. El Gura says, sick intro. Love to see the progress and how far you've come since the first episode. You're the one, man. Alright, thanks a lot, brother. Appreciate you. There was another good comment on here that said, let's see, where do y'all buy the kit now? I haven't received my brake light from them and can't get a hold of them anymore with their original website. Now, it's true, from what I've seen, I think the original website has been down for a bit, but if you guys are in touch with Melvin from Supercar Cars, he's pretty much dealing with all the Vaydor stuff. And, you know, it's a little tough to say these days. I mean, you know, you can still get the kits as far as I know, but, you know, things just change sometimes. Especially with something like this, you know, it's a highly sought after kit by some people, so you just never know. Sometimes you end up running into the right people that have one maybe sitting in storage that they're trying to get rid of, so that's a way to go about it too. And let's see, so before we get into it, once again, I just really wanted to tell you guys thanks a lot. There's still a little bit to be done, but it's getting there, and I do appreciate all the support. Alright, back again. It's always great to see you guys. So we're continuing on with the interior in this part. I was able to get my paint booth kind of cleared back out a little bit. I'm also doing some work to my little piano workshop restoration shed that I'm storing a lot of my piano stuff in. So that's kind of cool, but for a while I had pianos in my paint booth temporarily stored, and now like things are getting back into place. So love that. I'm going to cover a lot in this one, just as always, and we'll hopefully get a lot of this stuff for this interior kind of at least built, where the upholstery is going to be close to ready to go on, and maybe even get back into the paint job a little bit. So grab your snacks and all your favorite drinks and stuff, and let's do this. Alright, be prepared. There's a lot of stuff to do on this piece. Yeah. Tedious. I mean, unless you just build your car completely different from the way I build mine. Yeah. Mine's got a lot of work done to it. Okay, now when you get to fun pieces like this, alright, one thing I was unsure of is how much you cut down here. Well, if you see the way this rolls down, you do need to cut pretty much, you know, that whole, there's like a lip that kind of turns down like this way. I don't have another hand to show you right now, but you cut that whole lip off, and I actually need to cut a little higher up under here, probably where that green stuff is. You know, those two little green tick marks, I probably need to cut about that high, maybe even a little higher, because when you start trying to get this thing to set down in the dash, it really needs to go down. Now what's going to happen is this thing where the little clock piece, that starts to hit the dash. So I originally made these holes just so I could get my hand in there and kind of figure out where the wires were and whatnot. But now I set the piece up here, and what you want to do is line it up with this right here. So you're going to have this piece, let's see, right there, that edge that makes that little curve is gonna line up. And as long as you make sure when you rough set it in, just make sure that it lines up with this curve, and then you can draw lines where to cut out that area that needs to set in. So, and eventually I might need to cut out more. Just, I cut things real slowly. I'm pretty conservative about it because I don't want to cut too much of anything. That's just been the way I have done it throughout the whole car. But I haven't really caused myself any mistakes where I've had to go back and add fiberglass, you know, except places where I purposely was trying something that didn't work. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this out now, see if we can get this piece to set down in here kind of nice. Otherwise, the interior's going in pretty good. There's just a lot of, you just got to do it like everything else. Put it on, take it off, put it on, take it off. And slowly but surely, you know, I still need to adjust the gaps a little bit and figure out, there's still some things that need to move, but I've got my seat belts in, which is really cool. I don't think a lot of people cut through that panel, but I use the factory seat belt mount, and then you're gonna have to put a reinforcement bracket on it behind there, but that's all stuff, you know, I don't have in this little video. But anyway, I used the stock mounting point, and then up there I had to weld that one in, and then there's also a stock mounting point down there. So I like the way it goes through the hole. I think when I do the upholstery on it, I might get like some little bristles or some kind of nice thing to, you know, make that, to kind of fill that in. But who knows, it's pretty cool for now. At least it works, and I like the way that that sits. So yeah, this is just like everything else. Interior's a pain, but I mean, hey, one thing at a time. Okay, the way I'm gonna cut this piece out is I'm basically gonna take my permanent marker and make a line in there. That's easy enough, and my saw is gonna follow that, and probably I'm gonna keep it at like a nice 45-degree angle to the, or basically just centered kind of between that way and that way, the blade angle as I'm cutting it. That'll allow me to sand it kind of nice. Now as far as this top section, I don't want to cut this so thin that it just looks like an edge, so I'm leaving a little bit of this roll down. And what I want to do first is I taped it up so that I can take my marker and make a nice line along the tape, and then I'm going to pull the tape off so that I cut along that line. And that's just like little things that kind of matter. You know, if you leave this too thin, it's going to kind of look like, it's just going to look cheesy, like it's just an edge of something. But if you let a little bit roll down, well then it's more like it dies this way instead of this way. So that's just like little tedious things that I kind of think about. And I might even drop the tape down a little bit more. I'm just kind of looking at this to see if I like it. But I might leave a tiny bit more edge on there. I'm also trying not to leave too much where I can't see, you know, where it looks like part of the clock is cut off or something. But either way, I'll figure it out. Just, you know, take little things like that into consideration. All right, so we're always kind of reiterating how difficult and how tedious the Vaydor build is. Now, when you decide exactly where you want these AC controls to go on this white piece, I had made some crooked lines just when I was in the car, you know, just to show me about where it was gonna go. But I'll show you what all these other little lines mean in a minute. So this is the piece I had to order because my radio had the AC controls all integrated into it. If you have one of those particular G35s, mine's an 06, so I mean, maybe it's a way you can avoid it if you know what you're looking at when you buy your G35. But mine had the radio integrated with the AC controls, so that meant I had to buy this $200 piece that had the new controls in it, and it means this is just a standalone unit. So if you put in an aftermarket head unit, you don't use that old radio system at all. So basically what I'm having to do is I took the controls out and they're set aside, and you have to make a template. I mean, at least this is the way I'm doing it. You could take this and try to trace it, you know, like maybe you could put the circle over here, and then, I mean, it would be really tough. So what I had to do was make this little piece of paper fit, you know, between these little posts. I mean, you want it to sit nice and flat. I even cut some little grooves in it so that when I traced it, it was in there really nice. Like I had used some masking tape and pushed down on it. So anyway, when it's all sitting right, it's not now because I've got it kind of cut up, but I need to cut this last little rectangle out. Now, before I started cutting on this piece, so this is just some of that like barrier paper or kind of thick masking paper you'd use for painting a house. But once that last little square or rectangle is cut out, I made some lines before I started cutting, and these are my little guides. So you can see on the right, I've got a line right there on the white that shows me where to put this. I'm gonna line it up with that one over there, and then I've got this one here at the bottom. And I'll probably use some masking tape to hold it all the way down. You know, I actually used the tape measure to like make sure that my button line was gonna be nice and square. So I don't go off the points. I don't know how you cut yours, but mine weren't symmetrical, so I didn't go off the points at all. I used the straight line here. But anyway, measured up to there, made sure my button line was right about the same, and then I've got like another line right there that I'll match it up to. So I should know exactly where it's gonna go, and once I get those holes traced out, I should be able to cut all that out, and that little control piece should fit right back there. The only thing that I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to fiberglass some little mounds and cut. I'm gonna have to, basically, if you pretend like this is the back of this white panel, I'm gonna have to add some fiberglass. Probably, I'll make the screw holes first, and then I'm gonna add some little fiberglass mounds or some metal inserts. Who knows, maybe even some T-nuts. I might find a clever way to get, or some rivet nuts. You never know. I might find some way to get that to work. But no, probably not rivet nuts, because you're gonna have to install this thing from the back. So whatever it is, it gets installed from inside, and then this piece would go on. That's probably what's gonna have to happen. Anyway, I'm kind of thinking out loud, but that's what you gotta do. You're gonna have to make some way to get it to receive the screws when you put the control panel on back there. But that's nothing I can't figure out. It's totally cool. I'll be able to get past it. Of course, what you're seeing here is I'm starting to make the really tedious journey of cutting out all these little rectangles and squares in the circle. Now, I started everywhere that I could with a small drill bit, you know, something that seemed to match the radius. I can't remember. It might have been about something a little smaller than like a 1/4-inch drill bit, maybe somewhere between the 1/8 and the 1/4. But I don't remember exactly what size it was. But anyway, it's very helpful because you can make the cuts with that little Dremel disc, and once you hit those holes, it just kind of finishes it off for you. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so far the cutting of this is going out pretty good. Now, a couple things. I haven't done like the fine trimming in here. I've just cut out the holes, and I always cut smaller. But one thing that you always want to pay attention to, and I even mentioned this when we were doing the door handles on the outside of the doors, anytime you've got, you know, 3, 4, 5 holes in this case that have to kind of work together, you always want to look at your end-to-end overall. Like, so if I look at this straight on, I know you can't really see it from the camera, but like straight on from this way, the round button is exactly pretty much where it needs to be. I'll just clean the hole out a little bit. If you come over here to this side, you need to look and see that I've already pretty much cut enough to clear those buttons, okay? And that's one thing that's really important to look at, is no matter how your holes ended up, you know, as far as like here, you can always kind of clean that up. But you want to make sure that even before you've done that fine trimming, that you're lining things up with a nice centered kind of attitude between the end here and the end here. Look at the overall picture, just like on the door handle. You know, there's like 2 different holes on the outside that have to work together for that door handle. You want to always make sure that you're looking at your overall lengths and that things are lining up right, because you wouldn't want this button to be like in the perfect place, but then this side to be way off, because then you know that you're going to need to adjust that buttonhole a little, that round one. But as of right now, I first look at the ends, which, you know, look pretty good, and then I can pay attention to the rest of the buttons to see how they might need to be adjusted. So that's what's going on here. Now, the other thing is, after, you know, this is like pretty delicate in here now. I mean, you've got a good 1/8 inch of fiberglass or so. But by the time this is all cleaned out, I'm gonna get it nice and smooth, like where the buttons are fitting through and everything's working right. But what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna come back and add 2 or 3 layers of fiberglass back here. And that's what I think I decided to do. I'm gonna prep this real good with some 36 grit, go around it, and I'm just gonna lay 2 or 3 really good sheets of cloth, and at the same time I'm gonna add those little screw receiver posts I was talking about. And all together, I want to add those because that way it's fiberglassed in with these big sheets that I'm going to put on here. And even though these are going to get cut back out, you're going to have all this extra surface area kind of helping those posts be nice and stiff. And it's also going to stiffen up this little thing so that whenever I'm sanding it, whether I'm getting ready to paint this or who knows what, probably, you know, I don't know, paint it or do like a carbon fiber layer on the outside later, this will be a little bit stronger and, you know, better for me to work with, so it's not so flimsy back here. And it really isn't, it's not bad. I mean, this piece is pretty stiff, but just being that there's only that little bit there, by the time I kind of clean all this up, it's gonna look pretty, you know, skinny. And I think it's just gonna be nice to reinforce the thickness a bit. So that's what's going on with this piece. It's going good so far. I think overall this thing's gonna line up really nice. I got the part cut out for the clock, which that's a whole other story of getting that thing to fit right. And then of course I need to order my vents. I do have my radio now, so I can probably start messing with that. But yeah, it's moving along. So I'm gonna go put this piece back in a safe spot so I don't get fiberglass shavings all in it.
Now you guys have seen me use a rotary tool with the side cutting bit quite often, I'm sure. It's basically that, you know, perfect cylinder looking, it's kind of got like spiral flutes on the side, but if you look at the tip of it, it's flat, and it's also got cutting edges on the bottom of the tip. So it's great because with this thing you can literally cut sideways or you can plunge into something. And then of course I use my own little sandpaper files, even down to some nice needle files. There's a set you can buy, you know, at Harbor Freight or whatever, and use that little small flat file to really fine tune some of those narrow sides. Now at some point in here, I must not have videoed it, but I ended up cutting out the hole for the air ride gauge, the 2 rectangles for my switches, and then the smaller hole for the compressor switch. Now, this really just comes down to how you want to lay it out, how you want everything to look. So you just got to be creative for this part. I think I had a hole saw that got the gauge hole like really close. And you know, always just start small so you can file things out. The switches are a little tricky because they can fit extremely tight, but sometimes it's better to, you know, to shave it out a tad bit more. That way you can make sure, you know, you're not going to be breaking stuff if you have to take it apart and put it together a few times.
Alright, so one of the things I had to do for the AC controls, if you look at this piece, the screws actually go in from back here. Alright, now I had to order that bezel that has like the doubled in hole and all that, but you take this part off of it. And the way that this part attaches is it's actually from the back. So you can see the screws, I just have them put in there temporarily just to kind of hold these pieces together. But you actually have to put them in from back here. Now what does that mean? If I'm putting this piece on the white panel over here, well, it's not going to stay white, but it's one of these fiberglass pieces you get with your Vaydor kit or the interior. Now, it doesn't come with all this. I had to cut all this out for my air ride stuff. That's why building a kit car is not something you just go buy at the store and you take home and put it together. Okay, when you buy a Lego kit, you don't have to make any of the Legos or modify them. They work. This is parts that you have to modify and make work on the actual car. So, what am I doing? Well, I drilled some holes and I temporarily stuck some nails through each hole, which I just took out. The reason I stuck a nail in there is because I wanted to be able to build some of my flux mixture around where these holes are. And what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to get to make those pieces that when this slips in there, they have to actually fit in those little slots. Okay, now doesn't give you a whole lot to work with. So these are going to have to be really precise. It's going to take me a while with my little Dremel tool to trim these down to the correct diameter so that they fit in those little, whatever, those little kind of round receiving areas. But this is what it's all about. Now, the other option might have been, you could have possibly used some little wooden dowels and maybe, you know, glued them to this just right, but I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to use some resin and flocks and make these little stubs so that I could grind them down and work them to where this is going to slip perfectly on, and then the screw will go into that from the back. So that's just another nice example of how, you know, building a Vaydor or kit car in general is not for those that don't want to learn how to make parts, because really this is a piece, okay? You get lots of pieces when you order a kit. You have to make those pieces into a car part. So this is not a car part yet. I still have to cut the vents out. I'm waiting for those to come in. When this piece is painted and ready to install, that's when it's a part. But as of right now, it's just a fiberglass piece that needs some work. So that's what it's all about, and that's how I'm going to get this to fasten properly to the back. Alright, so if you remember before, I cut out the holes to get the AC buttons to fit nice and center, right? Now I'm still probably, once this is all said and done, I'm going to shave these out just a little bit. I mean, I'm talking maybe a few thousandths of an inch, just to get the buttons to fit in there a little bit looser. But what I'm trying to see right now is that everything is centered as I shave these little studs. Now, as you saw before, I made these little studs out of flocks and resin. And when you start cutting these to get this piece to fit, the reason this is taped together is because it's actually two separate things. And if you don't have tape there, it's gonna come apart without the screws in it. So when you start cutting these little nubs, you want to get the top correct first. If you can get this thing to fit on the very top of them, let's see, be really careful because it's still fitting really tight, which, you know, there's not a lot of room for tolerance here. And I can actually see that button is scraping a little bit against there. So I might make an adjustment that allows it to move that way. And if you look at the inside of this, okay, the parts that really matter are the inner areas of these radiuses. So it's basically in here and in here. So if I need the thing to move that way, I'm gonna have to shave a little bit off of this one to allow it to move over. And also remember, between the hole and the little cutout, you don't have a lot of room for error. So these little plastic nubs are gonna be really, really close. Like, I mean, there's just not, even whenever you put the screw in, you need to pre-drill the hole so that the screw threads in there nice and easy and it doesn't crack what's left of this plastic or, you know, resin. But this is what I'm having to do. So once you get the top where this piece will barely fit on and you know that you're in the right track, and as you get this better and better, you've got to look at the buttons and make sure it's still centering as it goes on. So once you get the top to where at least it's fitting over, you know, right up here, you're going to want to take your Dremel and get everything close, okay? I make files out of sandpaper and stir sticks. You can actually run it along here to make sure these are uniform, and you can do a lot to clean this up. So let's see how, you know, remember these outsides don't matter as much because it's open here. So it's not really going to be a big deal if you have these areas perfect. And I'm actually going to leave it a little slanted because it gives it a little bit more strength. You know, it gives these some more base to hold on to. Now, as far as getting the sides right, you're going to want to put that piece on and see the kind of angle that you need to make sure that the sides are pretty straight, and then also the inside. And once you've done a lot of this, you know, you can use both sides. I make a rounded side and I make a side with no sandpaper so that if I want to sand here, I'm not cutting away at this bottom part, but it's cutting away at the sides. Now, you see this one has a hole. That was one just from whenever I put the nails in it to help me build the flocks. But I'm going to fill in all these holes with resin, and then I'll re-drill where the screws actually go once I know that piece is setting on there right. Now, to finish it off, I'm taking this Dremel tool with a little, whatever you call it, little spiral looking carving bit in it, and I'm laying it right up against it. Okay, you're going to want to be able to eyeball this really good. So if it's hanging off like that, you'll know how much to cut. But as soon as the blade lays nice and flat against the top area that you've already perfected, that's how you know that you're getting the bottom to match. So this is really tedious. I mean, serious like attention to detail here. If you choose to do it this way, this is going to improve your skills for little detail stuff like that. But it's not easy, okay? There's other ways to do it, I'm sure. I don't know if, you would maybe take some little metal studs, build them to fit inside there, and then find a way to bond them to this piece. I don't know really, because if they come apart, that just means your piece is going to come loose. So I felt like resin to resin was probably the best way to go. It's definitely taking some attention to detail and more time to carve these right, but I'm about halfway there, or a little bit more than halfway. I feel like most of the hard part's done. Now that I got it lined up, I just need to keep shaving these down a little bit more and make sure we get those buttons to sit, nice and flat, or at least, through the slots pretty good. This right here, the base of the black piece is actually going to sit right against the fiberglass. So I'm about 1/4 of an inch away, and shouldn't take too much more. Okay, so pretty much the final part of getting these studs just right and getting them filed and all that is going to be getting the length correct. Now, I'm going to set this down a bit. Now, the side here that basically has the buttons, like the square or rectangle buttons, I've pretty much got it where it's flat. And what I'm looking at is the black part needs to meet the fiberglass flat right here. So these, I got them filed just right as far as the height goes. Now you want to look at both sides, and this side looks good too. Now over here, when you look at the side that has the hot and cold, the temperature change, it looks like I need about another 1/16 of an inch down. So basically, I'm gonna make little marks, which I've already made them, but this part needs to go down to the fiberglass. You can see a little bit of a gap. I need about another 1/16 of an inch cut off the top of these. And that is gonna make this pretty much finalized. Now, in a way, at least for getting the size filed correctly. And on the other side, it's the same. So both of these little posts need to go down about 1/16, and that's why I put marks on them. And what I'll basically do is take my little file that I made, and I'll go real flat. I'll work this, try to get the angle flat to this as well, so that, it's not anything awkward going on up here. But I'm going to take this and I'm going to file both of them at the same time. And once I get pretty much the marker, get rid of that little Sharpie mark that I made on both of them, that's going to tell me that the height is pretty much going to be right where I want it. Now, if you're still up like a, 3/1000ths of an inch or something, that's not a huge deal. But I want to get as close as possible without making them too short. Now I'm going to put this piece back on. It's really cool how this thing's fitting, and I'm trying to do all this with one hand. But the buttons are going to try to kind of get in the way, so sometimes you got to like move them as you're putting this piece on and you're fitting it. But now that I've pretty much got it to where it'll set on there without much trouble, you also want to look at the buttons and see where they need to be shaved out a little bit more. Now this is super tight right now. And also this little centerpiece, as thin as it is, there's little black dividers, and those are causing that little centerpiece to not want to push down. So I'm gonna shave a tiny bit more off that centerpiece. And then for the circle part, I'm still shaving around it, and if you push it, it goes down to cold really easily and it feels like normal operation. But when you go up to hot, it feels like it's hitting a little bit. So the gap here needs to be a little bit better. So the buttons can be done final, at least. You're getting it close whenever you're cutting all that out. You still need to be really precise when you're rough cutting. But to finalize these, that's gonna be done after you know that these posts are holding it exactly where it's gonna go, and it's not really gonna move anymore. And this is a super tight fit. Like, even without the screws, I've been able to place it on there. Now, you don't want it so tight that you're gonna break these little tabs. you got to be an artist about it, and you know, shave around these things and make sure you get them nice and straight, you know, all the way around. But you want it to, you know, slip on there kind of snug, and that's pretty much what I've done. So I'm really happy with the way this is coming out. This is not as probably technically challenging as the doors, but as far as your attention to detail and your patience, it's going to be really important if you go this route whenever you mount your AC control. Part of me thinks I need to make a mold of this little section or something, just so it's a lot easier to like trim it out, but I don't know if I will, and then make it to where the posts are already included on it. That would be great for anything in the future. But so that's where I'm at. I'm gonna take this piece back off. I'm gonna shave these last 2 posts down. Like I was saying, I'm gonna get the height just right on these, and the final step is gonna be for me to fill the holes that I made from the nails. When I first built those, I had to put nails through it to kind of help hold the flocks in place, but those holes are not correct. So I'm gonna fill those holes in with some resin, and when it's all cured, I'm gonna put the panel back on, and I'm gonna make one little dot through each screw hole, and I'll know exactly where to precision drill those holes for the screws, and that's gonna pretty much finish that off. So another successful thing. I've been scratching my head for probably as long as I've been building the car of how I was gonna do this, and we're conquering it now. So just another task I can check off. All right, so I've managed to make this piece really nice where, you know, the AC controls slip onto the 4 posts really good. And you can see how there's not a lot of room for tolerance here. Now, it doesn't look like it's going in. I mean, I'm not gonna put it all the way, but it does. It fits really nice. Now, you can see there's just not a lot of room for tolerance here. You can't really make that post much bigger than the screw hole. So this has to be as perfect as you can get it. Now, if you're planning to do it this way, let me show you what I'm doing right now. I'm heating up the soldering iron because the screws are starting to thread in just a little bit. Like this one, I've already got it barely started. And I feel like if you turn it really slowly, you could kind of work it in there, okay? But what I'm hoping is if I can warm that screw up or heat it up hot enough where the threads will melt into the resin inside the posts a little bit, that's gonna allow it to be better instead of, you know, possibly splitting this little post. Now, even though I use West System resin and I know that this stuff is really strong, you could probably drill out the hole a little bit wider, but then I feel like the thread engagement wouldn't be as good. Now, you don't need a whole lot of thread engagement. I'm just kind of doing this as like trying to be, you know, a little bit better. But I use the number 45 drill bit, or I think it would be close to about a 5/64. If you're using just a regular drill bit box, you probably need a 5/64. The number 45 is pretty close to that. And I basically drilled out these holes to where, you know, that's the size they're at. Now, if you wanted to use something bigger, maybe like the number 41, the threads would probably still grab, they just wouldn't be as tight. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve, is just to make this thing have really nice tight threads. So we'll see if it works. If not, if it doesn't seem like heating up the screw is helping it go in a little easier, then I'll probably just basically, you know, drill them out, and I'll do it that way. It'll be fine, because even a little thread engagement in here is gonna be enough to hold those AC controls on. I just like things to be really strong. So we'll see what happens. This is just one of those things that I'm trying as I go, but there's always kind of a backup plan.
So as you can see what I was doing here, this, by the way, did not work. So I don't recommend this. Don't do it. I'm just showing you because it was one of those things that I tried. For whatever reason, you'd have to get the heat just right. And I think because I'm using cotton flocks in the resin, it makes it to where those pieces are more likely to crack apart. Instead of, maybe if it was all resin, it might melt a little bit for the threads. But yeah, it just wasn't a good way. I ended up drilling the holes out where the threads would cut into them just enough. And that's ended up being the solution for this.
Okay, so the AC controls are fastened in. I can push them. They seem like they're gonna work just fine. I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna mark this hole because I wanna shave a little bit more out of this side where it makes this a little bit more even. It's a little high down there, but that's just the way it's being held in. Now on the back, I did try heating the screws with a soldering iron when I drilled out the pilot holes, but it turns out heat isn't that good. I mean, high heat's not good for this resin. It ended up cracking this post over here, and I just had to go back and fix it, but that's fine because even though there's stress going from the inside that wants to expand these, when you put this piece on, it's actually holding everything together tight. So what I ended up doing was drilling the holes a little bit oversized, not really oversized, just pretty much to match the threads of the screws. I ended up using the number 41 drill bit, and that got it to where I could put this piece on and just, you know, get those screws in. It holds nice and tight. And what I'm gonna do now, you know, basically these were the pilot holes that I had drilled on the front. Now these can be completely covered up, you know, with a little touch of Bondo or whatever before I paint this panel. So this is great. Got that to work. That is definitely something that you got to chase around for a while. It takes a little bit to get all this figured out, but you can see how I did it. It'd be great if I could just easily make a mold of this section down here where these posts are part of the mold and it's all made together as one, but I don't know. I don't have time to do it. If I was going to build a bunch of Vaydors after this, I'd probably do that, but who knows. Anyway, glad to have this piece done so we can kind of move on. Well, I guess not done. I'm going to probably start messing with the AC vents so I can get that hole proper and finish installing the radio bracket like I was doing the other day.
Now you can see already at some point that I made a rectangle cutout where the stereo is going to go. Now that's not the final cut, I know, because it's, you know, I'm past that part now, but I ended up cutting this piece into two separate panels because there is such a small clearance between the stereo bracket that holds in the head unit and the AC controls that there was just no way I would have had these little slivers of fiberglass holding these two panels together. So I just said, you know, who cares? Cut it into two pieces. I'm going to probably have to mount the bottom piece in first and then find a strategic way to mount this panel in basically once the radio's installed. So we'll get there and go into more detail as it comes.
All right, this piece right here, I'm telling you, this is gonna feel like half or 60% of the interior build. So I got air ride stuff down here. My AC controls are fitting good now. This is the cutout for my screen because the radio I'm putting in is a Sony and it has a screen that hangs out kind of like the Tesla, which I think is cool. Some people don't like it, but I think it's gonna be fine. So I probably won't do the full radio cutout on this panel. Now there's a chance I'm most likely going to cut this in half and then these are going to fasten to the dash separately, but this is kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm getting a rough feel for, you know, how the radio is going to mount. I know this stuff's going here. I got to fill in the little nail holes from when I first built the posts. So I'm about to do a little bit of resin touch up on here. We're going to fill those in. I'm going to fill in some of the bubble areas that were, I mean, this sucks right here, having to fix this line, because these are basically voids where it was like chipping out. There was no fiberglass under there. There's another piece I found up here. There was another divot. And on the sides, what I'm doing, this is where the clock piece is setting in the car, and I didn't want to grind the corners off. So I allowed them to protrude through this, and I made a hole. Now what I did was I took some of this metal aluminum tape, and you put it on the back, and you just basically take, you know, your thumb or whatever and make the size of a little mound that you need to clear. Now I didn't need a whole lot to clear that little clock piece, but the difference between letting it come through this little maybe 1/8 of an inch versus making it stay down in there, it's a huge difference between being able to actually see the thing or not. So just getting it to where it protrudes through here, this made a big difference. And I'm gonna start by building a little bit of flocks around here, and then I'm gonna put 2 layers of actual glass cloth over it. Once that's dry, I'm gonna give it a light sand, and then I'm gonna basically body work. I'm gonna use more resin flocks putty and I'm gonna do body work to where it blends in. So however high this ends up, it's gonna blend in with the rest of this. Now this line's gonna change a little bit, but I'm okay with that. I'm just gonna have to make it where it flows and it looks right. Same on the other side. So see, I got these to push through just a little bit, and I just kind of used my thumb, and then I checked it to make sure that the clock wasn't gonna punch through, and it looks like it's all gonna fit good. And of course the clock piece, I can still adjust it down a little bit, but this helps a lot to get the thing where I really want it to sit. So that's what I'm doing now, making some touch-ups on this panel. I'll be glad when this piece is done, because that means all this stuff is gonna be fitted. You know, it'll be able to be installed. I'll probably paint this panel to match the outside of the car. I'm not gonna do a whole lot of paint on the interior, but this piece is probably one that I'm gonna do paint on. I think it would look kind of cool. So that's that. I need to fit the AC vents, but I'm gonna get some resin on these little touch-up spots, and then we'll get back to work on it. Oh, and then there's my air ride stuff again. Pretty cool. I also took the time to get my air ride switches and my gauge installed over there. You can kind of see that. That's pretty cool. Everything's working now. And as small as that seems, gosh, it takes time.
Alright, now some time has gone by since that previous clip, and I wanted to show you what I ended up with. So what you're seeing here is the white panel has been cut into two different pieces, because I'm going to install the bottom one, then install the radio, and then put the top one on. But I'm going to make it to where they both kind of help secure the radio in. So it would be tricky to ever try and get this radio out if you don't know what you're doing. And that's what I'm going for. Okay, if you haven't heard anybody say it yet, you should have already heard this a long time ago if you've even done anything remotely close to looking into building a Vaydor. But you should have saved everything. And this clock piece that comes from the Infinity, you definitely need it, because it's also got your air conditioning control. So when you get your new AC controller that's like the standalone piece, if you had the radio that had it all integrated together, and I've talked about it before, you gotta buy that separate piece. It's like the double DIN thing with the AC controller in it. I take that out and use it. So that has to work in conjunction with this clock unit. It's got your AC display in it. So you have to have those two pieces hooked up for your AC to really work or do anything. So this was a little bit tricky. Now, something I was originally thinking was cutting the corners off to get this piece to fit. And Melvin kind of confirmed one day I was talking to him. He said, yeah, like you take this piece apart, you're pretty much taking it down to the pieces that you need, and you're going to cut the corners off to get it to fit under that dash panel that goes over it. Now, I was a little stubborn about not cutting this thing. I left it all intact and tried to figure out a way to mount it in there, but what I had to do was I had to cut some small holes on the sides of that dash panel. I keep thinking of it as the white panel because it's got gel coat on it, but it's not going to end up white. So basically I cut a few holes for those corners to go through, but I'm refiberglassing it, and I'm just making it form enough to where it's still covering this piece and kind of fixing the shape. So you'll see if you kind of pay attention here that my clock display piece is pushed further towards the front of the car, whereas if you cut enough off of it, you're going to be able to back it up and make it closer to the actual face of that panel where the cutout goes. Now, the way that I'm doing it, it's definitely a little bit weird. Like I said, I was being stubborn about not wanting to cut it, but this also means I'm going to have to put some kind of a tunnel inside there. I'm going to have to build something that kind of extends, and that way it's not letting you see like into the dash. So if you're outside looking at the car, you look into the dash, you might be able to see some of the wires and stuff through there. So I'm gonna have to kind of clean that up a bit. But yeah, this is the way that I have it mounted so far, and you know, if it really causes some kind of problem, I might have to change it later, but hopefully this will work because I kind of like the way that it sits.
Now, what I did was I started by building a flat bracket, and it attaches to this piece that comes up from the dash support. There's a big bar in the car, and it has this bracket coming up. Well, what I did was I built this out of some of that 1/8 inch thick steel I have. I have a bunch of this stuff, and it's come in handy for a lot of reasons. I had to put a nice little bend on it. It's hard to tell, you know, the angle, like, I mean, how many degrees it is or whatever. But what I also did was started with a piece of angle that catches the bottom of this clock piece. So you've got 2 holes here, and if you take that piece of angle, mark where, you know, you need to cut it to length first because it needs to fit in there just right. So cut it to the length and then mark where your 2 holes are going to go. All right, build that piece and then build this piece. I want to say this was about 5 inches long. It could have been a little shorter. But when you start to position this thing, you kind of understand where it's going to set. Also, you need to use the white piece. Let's go in here really quick because this is a big determining factor on where that's going to go. And really, it's where these 2 holes are. That's where the little tabs are going to come through a little bit. I'm going to actually put some fiberglass over this, and I'm going to reshape these curves so that it covers that little bit that needs to stick out. Now, it's not by much. It's really just barely higher than flush when the little, I'll show you the parts that are sticking out. They're not sticking out by much, probably less than 1/8 of an inch. It's these little ears right here, and as much as I think you could just maybe trim them off a bit, I didn't want to do that. So I put holes in the sides of the white panel, and since it barely comes through, it's only going to take a little bit of fiberglass. I just need to prep the area. I need to sand all this, and I'm going to build up some cloth, just enough to go over that, and then I'm going to just, like I said, reshape the curve here and here a little bit to get this to all look right. I'll probably use some flux mixture to do that. But this is a big part of where that's going to go, and you can see I pretty much put it at the widest point. So the front of the glass is going to be right where this, basically where it curves, or where the point is. This is like basically the widest part of this panel where it's going to fit. Now, that does mean it's going to set back a little bit, but there is no way possible that that piece is going to fit all the way up against this face without you either cutting this or cutting that part, and then it may not even be operable anymore. So it just means that it's going to be setting kind of far back in there, but it's still very visible, and I figure I'll just take a piece of plexiglass and probably just get it to where it fits here really nice, and you'll just look through the plexiglass. Also, you're probably going to want to, take some spray paint or something and just paint the inside of this black so that when you do look through the hole, if you're sitting in the car, you might see up in there a little bit, and you don't want to see that. I would say go with some satin or flat black. You don't want to see that light pinkish tan color. So that's pretty much what's going on here. Now, as I was talking about the bracket, I've got it just tack welded right now. So it's tack welded on that corner and that corner. So I'm about to take these pieces back out, and you can see here all I did was take some aluminum pieces and I notched them with a little L notch on both sides. So they fit perfectly in these little areas, but then it stops because it's wider back here. Same thing on that side. And for this, you just figure out where it's gonna go, shoot a rivet nut through there. I used the 1024s and had some of these interior screws that I bought for for the headliner and whatnot. I had some of these left, and these are just really nice, so I figured to use those. This thing is about as tight and secure as I could ever ask for it to be, and I love that. Now it's just time to take the pieces back out. I'm going to clean these edges up a little. I'm going to weld this a little bit more solid, maybe put a few small beads, just enough to where I know that's never going to bend, and then clean up these corners a little bit, maybe round them off and get these parts ready to throw some quick paint onto. So that way, that's how this is going to be mounted. And I'm really happy with that. This took me a while to kind of think about. At first, I was thinking people were mounting it to the white panel, but apparently that would just be a pain. And I wish it fit that white panel a little bit better. Like if they could have made this dash a little different for this, but it's all good. This is just one of those things. You literally have just enough space. And I mean, you can see I had to keep coming in and re-notching this out just to where, you know, the fabric's gonna go around the dash and it's gonna hide the end by that white panel, you know, or fabric's gonna wrap around underneath a little bit, but at least, you know, there's just enough space to get it down in there now. So that's how it's going. All right, here's the pretty much finished product on that. We got the bracket painted, edges are nice and cleaned up. This thing is about as sturdy as I could ever ask for it to be. And it's got the back braces there too. I used some Allen bolts with lock washers and then a regular washer in between. So, man, that's pretty happy with that. Seems like it's right in the place I need it too. So there we go, on to the next.
Now, I wasn't really sure how I was going to mount this stereo head unit in. I got a really nice Sony. It's that, I want to say XAV AX 8500. I know it's the 8500. I can't remember all the letters before it. But this thing is cool. It had a really sleek look, and it doesn't have the chrome. I love Pioneer, but it doesn't have that chrome thing that Pioneer has. And it's just all satin black. And I said, man, when I looked at it, I actually saw it on display at Best Buy, and I was just like, man, this thing is the one that I want when I saw it. So I was blown away by the way it looked, and it seems like it's very capable. It actually accepts up to 3 cameras, so it's a reverse camera and you can do 2 more, which is awesome. And perfect for the Vaydor, since, you know, we kind of need more cameras than just like 1 or 2. Now, what I'm doing to mount this thing, I wasn't completely sure how I was going to go about it, but I knew I wanted to start by making the face bracket. So I basically cut a rectangle of 1/8 inch thick steel, and you can kind of see here that was, you know, I wanted to get like the part cut out. So I cut the outer rectangle, then I wanted to get the inside piece cut where the head unit would slide right into it and fit nice and snug. So that's what this piece is. And then ultimately I was able to weld some tabs to that rectangle that were going to help me mount it to the dash, you know, console area right there in the middle. One thing I will mention is you don't have a lot of space to play with here. I want to say, you know, the sides were maybe only a 1/4 inch wide on this metal bracket, and it could be the height that I was mounting it. You know, I think if you raise it up a little higher, you probably have more room to play, but I knew I was going to have this big screen, and I was trying to get everything to position as properly as I could, where I had my air ride at the bottom, air conditioning, the stereo screen, and then still enough room for those AC vents, and then to be able to see that clock piece at the top. Because, you know, the clock piece is actually part from the G35, and you're going to have to hook that up. So when you operate your AC controls, it's like your AC display, or, you know, your climate and all that. So this was definitely tricky. But I even ended up needing to cut a little bit off the bottom of this bracket after I made it. You know, it started out being about 1 inch on the top and 1 inch on the bottom, and I think I ended up with maybe 1/4 of an inch on the bottom, or a little bit more. So it wasn't very much, but you know, at least I made it out of 1/8 inch steel, so it's pretty strong. Once I got the fitment stuff figured out, it was just basically down to some wiring, and you know, I chased a few wires to figure out where the remote turn-on wire was in the back, so that was pretty cool. I actually did a short video showing it's like a sage green wire on one of the plugs. So when you connect the blue with white stripe on this wiring harness, you should have a 12 volt like remote amp turn-on that goes into the trunk. You just gotta locate that wire. It originally hooked up to the Bose system, so you can kind of use that for your aftermarket amp if you want. So basically what's been going on lately is I've got the interior being built, and I'm also getting some other parts ready to paint. Trying to do the doors soon, also the body trim pieces, and as for the interior, there's been a lot of stuff done. The headliner, we've been through that. Now I've been working on dash control pieces, like getting the air ride switches cut in, the gauge, but you know, there's everything is just so tedious. You know, getting those AC controls cut through all the little holes.
now I've actually got the radio unit mounted. At least I had it temporarily mounted to see how it was going to fit, and I kind of know where everything's going to fall into place. So it's getting to that point where I can start finalizing some pieces on the dash and know how all this stuff is going to go together so that I can have maybe some interior panels covered finally.
It's looking so awesome. Like, I have my panel mounted now for the air ride, and you see the AC controls are in it. All that display stuff is mounted. It's coming along. I actually had the radio powered on yesterday. It's a big screen, but I didn't want to leave it in because it's not really ready to be installed permanently yet. So, freaking cool. Okay, one thing I hadn't done a lot of on cars over the years is steering wheel swaps. And this is pretty much, my first time to actually go through and do it with the quick release and all that. So the one that adapts to the G35 is this SRK141H. It's made by NRG. I don't know if that's going to focus properly. But that is what actually adapts to the Infinity so that you can basically put like a Sparco or whatever kind of steering wheel on that you want. If you're going to do the quick release thing, that's another piece, and that is this one, which was SRK250BK, and that's all pretty cool. So at first I didn't know what all I needed. I ordered the quick release thing, and then I was like, oh, I need this actual hub adapter too. Also, this is an important thing to note. If you're on Amazon and say you're ordering one of these adapters, I want to say it's the quick release adapter that has the silver screws that come with it. And what that's for is that's to, if I'm thinking about it right, I could go look at the car, but there's going to be a set of screws that come with one of these parts, and it's meant to attach that to the hub. Alright, but Amazon is good sometimes about prompting you with other items. Like it might say other buyers also bought this. And what you're going to need is, don't forget, you're going to need those, I think it's 8 screws that are going to hold the steering wheel to the actual adapter, to the quick release adapter. So just look into that and make sure that you're getting what you need there when it comes to ordering an aftermarket steering wheel. So, yeah, anyway, I'm trying my best to remember, but if Amazon prompts you to order that, you might want to look into it, make sure that's what you need, and get it. Also, I ordered a clock spring while I was in there doing all this because the horn wasn't working, and after everything I had traced, I actually was able to make it honk by, shorting out a wire that was right behind the clock spring. And I said, okay, well, if it's working from there through the system, it's obviously something in there. So that ended up fixing it. And I want to say there were some tricky things about the clock spring on this car. I want to say when I ordered it, there were certain pieces you needed off the old one, so be careful. You're gonna have to kind of switch some of there's a bunch of pieces that are kind of there, so I don't have a real detailed video on that, but you can figure it out. As long as you put things back the way that they originally were, it should work out just fine. Alright, so here's my cool steering wheel that I installed. Now, there's not a whole lot to show really with this, but if you're gonna do a steering wheel, you gotta understand it's not just the quick release part, okay? That's here. You gotta have the actual hub. Now, NRG made these parts, and then I got a Sparco steering wheel. And what's really cool is the wires are routed, like there's little channels on the back where the wires just go right in. It's really cool. I love the way this steering wheel is made. But so that's what you're gonna need if you want to do a setup like this. Remember, you can't just get the quick release part because that's not what goes to your car. You have to find the hub that's meant to adapt to your specific car. So you'll see I have the hub, and then the other logo it's 2 separate parts, okay, and then the steering wheel was a third. As far as wiring goes, all I have is my 2 buttons wired for the horn, but these buttons are both just wired up to that one black wire that comes, out of the first, or whatever, out of the clock spring.
whenever you buy these parts, they're going to come with a new wiring harness that just has a single wire, and that's just for your horn, so it gets rid of all those other controls. But that's pretty much it for the steering wheel. It wasn't a super difficult install, just a few things to kind of learn. I typically put some Loctite on these bolts when I'm bolting it to the adapter, so that way, you know, they're the type of bolts where, you know, you're going to tighten them down good. They're fine threaded, but why not throw some thread lock on them too? So that's pretty much it for the steering wheel setup. Oh yes, it comes off pretty easily. Let's see, one-handed. Boom, just like that. And there it is. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys how to do this, because this is a pain. So once you get this seal to actually fit over this, all right, when you get the doors, most likely this line is gonna be super thick. Like mine was at least a quarter or almost a half inch in some places. I ground it down pretty much from the inside. If you do it from the outside, I don't really know what kind of problems you could cause besides maybe going through it and having to patch up some fiberglass. But once you get it where it actually slips on, and I'm talking slips on tight, let me see if I can do this with one hand. It's tricky. You might hear it. Oh yeah, you hear it pop? All right, that's because I've gone and cut my line already. But what you're gonna have to do is press this thing on. Hold on. It's not wanting to go now because I got the camera on. There we go. Okay. So right now I've got it fitted pretty good. And if I lift up the door, I've got a bunch of stuff. But you can see it looks about the way that I want it to. Now, once you get it where it actually slips on, the trick to knowing where to cut that line, you need to be able to look in here, and you see I've still got some gap between the top of there and there. I'm not trying to get this piece to go all the way down, because most likely you'd have to keep shaving away at this stuff, and I mean making it thinner and thinner. I would rather have some thickness, and this piece doesn't need to go all the way up in there. As long as this thing is catching and holding on good, where the wind isn't gonna pull it off. And man, right now, like, it's tight. It would take a heck of a Enigma windstorm to pull this thing off. Especially if the mirror is gonna be here. It might kind of shield it a bit. Also, I'm probably gonna have to make some kind of piece that takes up the last bit. It's gonna have to be something that looks kind of nice. And I'm thinking that's gonna help make sure wind doesn't catch this, because it's gonna go over it. So that's just my thought process. But the main thing I wanna show you right now is when you get this piece to fit on and it slides on, you know, it's gonna be really tight, but you get it to actually slide on a little bit. What you're gonna wanna do is take something like a razor knife. Let me see where mine's at. I had one of these, where'd I put it? Yeah. So you're gonna wanna take one of these knives, okay, it's got this blade. I turned it backwards so it would do more scratching rather than cutting. And I just basically took it and I got it in here as much as I could. You know, it's gonna hit the door shell a bit, but I took it in here and I drug it along this to make a nice solid line, okay? So if you look at where your line is gonna end up and you look at the end, the rubber is about 1/8 of an inch thick. So what you're really gonna need to do is you're gonna make a line. It's gonna be out here somewhere, okay? But just take like 1/8 of an inch. Actually, what you would do is use your cutoff wheel in the inside of that line. So if I could explain that a little bit better, let me see if I can pop this off now. Yeah, see, that's what I want. This thing is holding on now where it's actually kind of hard to take off. And you know, you don't want to break it, because I'm sure if I had to buy one of these from Infinity, they'd want $580 for this stupid thing. So basically, my line, my scored line, was like here. Come on, focus for me. My scored line was probably about here at the inside, and then I used the cutoff wheel to cut this way. That way, what you've got left over is gonna hook. You know, this is making up for that 1/8 inch of rubber thickness, and then it's gonna end up coming over and popping down and hooking right there. So that's the trick that I use to do this. Now, you're going to have to use a real steady hand to follow that line that you scored with the knife. And just be real careful with your cutoff tool. You're not going to be pushing down very hard. I would say run the speed kind of high, but don't press down. That way it cuts a little smoother and you're not like jumping out of it a lot. But if you can get it to follow your scored line all the way down, and see over here my line was a little far out. This new phone, the way they focus is really frustrating. It's a little too smart. So you can see my line is further out, but I didn't end up needing it that far. I ended up cutting a little inside of it, so that's fine in some places, but you try to be as accurate as you can. So I ran the cutoff wheel all the way along, okay, and got it to be about 1/8 of an inch deep or so. And then to come back, what you want to do is take this edge of your file, like that sharp corner, and I was just basically putting it up at about a pretty hard, maybe kind of 45-degree angle. And I was using the front nose of the file to shave out. So I'm sitting here running like this. And I'm literally shaving out what's left of that to let that thing fit a little bit better. So I'll probably come back and sand it with some sandpaper once I feel like it's fitting the way I want it. I pretty much got this one the way that I want it to be. But I'm just gonna go back, I'll sand a little bit more, and you'll realize as you sand that last little bit off, it should fit a little better. If you've got it like really tight, then you know you're just gonna be kind of fine tuning it. So that's the way that I'm doing this, and just one thing after another. Every little thing on this car is tedious and pain. So part of building this car is you have to make the attaching points for a lot of stuff. I've already laid the this is like the piece that operates the window, and it lays in here like this. I need to clean it up. It looks like a mess, but basically I've laid it in here. I know exactly how it needs to sit. It's got these dowel pins that go in these holes. Now even these holes aren't here when you get this door. The kit for the car is not like parts that are ready to use, and I've said this before. You have to trim, adjust, build the parts to where they're gonna fit the car. Like these holes have to be drilled exactly where this thing is gonna sit, and you gotta make sure that it's the proper angle for the window to line up with like the roof of the car and stuff. So I've already done that. When I had that all put together, I had to figure out exactly where these dowel pins go. And now that I know where they go, I was able to set the plate in here, and I'm gonna drill out all the holes where the screws actually go, and that's what hold it together. So a lot of the hard work is done. Just kind of going back now and doing some of the loose ends, like some of the things that needed to be done. I'm using these little 1024 rivet nuts, and it's cool because you drill a hole, you install them in here, and then the screw is going to go into that. So you've got permanent metal threads instead of, you know, you don't just screw into the fiberglass, because this wouldn't be very good. So that's all that it is. I'm basically drilling my holes and going around installing these little rivet nuts, and these doors are almost ready to be reprimed and painted. So making some good progress. You have to round these holes out just a little bit. The bit that I have is almost the perfect size, but it's like just enough to where I have to, I have to round them out a little bit bigger. So I use a little rivet nut installer. This thing's pretty amazing. And I know exactly about how tight to get them. This one actually let me put it in a little bit more than some of the others do. And I like that, because the tighter you can pull it, the more thread engagement that you're going to have for the screw. So that's cool. I like to check it and make sure that it's going in there just fine, and it seems to be good. So yeah, that's what it takes. Imagine doing this to every part of the car. Now, the doors are probably the more complex part. When you think about it, when you're building a door, you've got a window that moves up and down, you've got lock actuators, you've got electricity. You're practically building a small robot. I mean, that's what a car door, in a way, it is. It's got some robotic stuff going on. So there's a lot to the doors, but everything else still requires you to find the points where you're going to screw things together. You got to install the means for fastening, and that's just a good summary of what it's taken to build this whole car. So yeah, we'll continue on with it. Be glad to see some more parts painted. Also, you may notice that I'm not jamming the drill through. Now, it is catching and kind of going through. I try to control that whenever I can, but there's really nothing under here that I'm going to damage if it goes through. So it's not really the end of the world. It's just I'm not pushing hard because you don't want to break through the fiberglass. You want it to kind of cut through it for the most part. And then that last bit where it goes through is I mean, sometimes you can control it, sometimes you can't, but it's no big deal. It's not really breaking the structural strength of it or anything like that. So, more rivet nuts. This thing is cool because it pulls, you're threading it in and then it's pulling against the surface. So it's literally like expanding this little rivet nut inside there. And it'll be there forever unless you drill it out for some reason. So that's how that works. Let's see. That one was a little off center, but I think it still works. Yeah. Still good. Very cool. This is just a little section where I went to do all my rivet nuts, and I knew there were two places where I had cut a little too much. So now that I've got that door, window regulator panel all fitted in properly, I probably should have, see if my resin's dry, I should probably fill in those little holes there. But there were two holes that were a little bit off the edge, like by half or less. So I'm adding a little bit more of this fiberglass back. So that's kind of what's going on there. And I know a lot of it's going to get trimmed away, but sometimes you got to add extra to get the thickness that you want. So that's what we're doing here. All right, here's another fun equation. Once you get the mirror to actually go through, you get your hole cut big enough, you get it to set in there the way you want it, you're going to see that these bolts are at a tilt. So what I'm going to probably do is take a measurement. This is pretty much about 1/4 of an inch where the top of the nut collar is gapped from the fiberglass. So what I'm thinking is I'm gonna build 1/4 inch thick of fiberglass under this area. I'm gonna take the mirror off and I'm gonna build 1/4 inch thick of fiberglass under here because you can access through the hole that you made. And what that's gonna allow me to do is take either a drill bit or some kind of an etching tool and cut a flat basin into this, where the only area that is left really is gonna be up here. And then you're gonna end up cutting, some angled like recesses for those nuts to go in and sit flat. So even though this holds the way that it is, I mean, sure, you could build the fiberglass on top of here just to get this to sit flat, but I'm a little concerned about other parts that need to go in here. Like if I need those nuts to go in there further, and then I can cut a little bit of the bolt off to make some room to clearance for something else. That's why I want those to inset. I mean, like I said, you could probably just build some flocks out here and make a nice flat seat. And I might explore that option a little bit more. But I know there's that big window track piece that goes in here, and I'm not exactly sure where it's gonna end up yet. So I don't want there to be any obstruction. I'd rather get these to sink in as far as I can and then maybe cut off the excess of the threads once I know that they're in there good. So that's what I'm gonna do for the mirror. Now, if for some reason my original idea doesn't work, where I was gonna build up the resin like in here for the mirror, and it could be because this part of the mirror kind of pushes, this is in there. So if there's not enough room and this is in the way, the other idea that I had is to cut the plate out where I've already made the bolt holes. Now it's gonna be tricky. I'd have to get in here with like probably the body saw and cut around and be able to just cut out this little plate with these holes. But what would be really neat is maybe if I can cut that out. I can bolt it onto the mirror, get the mirror to set in here somehow, maybe use some clamps or whatever, get it to set the way that I want it. And with this plate bolted, you know, say the plate's been cut out, it'll be bolted to those 3 studs. And then what I can do, it's gonna be sitting at a tilt. So what I'll have to do is add a little bit of fiberglass back here to basically bond that plate temporarily until it dries. And then when I've got the tilt angle correct, I can take the bolts off, get the mirror out, and then I can actually take the nuts off, get the mirror out, and then that plate will be already sitting at the proper angle, and I can go back and fiberglass it all the way around where I won't have the mirror in the way. And that might be the other way to do it. So we've got a few options here. Either way, it's another one of those tedious operations, so we'll keep on going.
You know, to take these pieces from being just raw fiberglass to actually being usable car parts, it's such a process. There's so much to it.
So I'm sure you guys are well aware by now that there are lots of tasks to do on these doors. I mean, before prime and paint, after paint, there's certain things that you're going to be chasing until the end of this build that are part of the doors. I mean, very, very tedious stuff, but hey, that's why we do this, right? I'm getting ready to prime the trim pieces along with one of the door shells. So this is like the final primer, and I really want to get it right. So I took the glue gun, glued some stir sticks, and this is going to allow you to kind of hang this and twist it in a few different ways. Just don't drop it, you know. But yeah, allows you to get around these edges. They're kind of tricky to get, you know, everywhere that you need to. And then in some, you know, ways you're going to be able to set it down. Maybe you can just use this to turn it the way that you want it, or to hold it from moving. But you know, these bigger ones, you might pick it up and be able to, like, you know, move them where you can get around all the little areas that you need to hit and whatnot. But yeah, so that's something that might help you out. I think it's going to work good. I will say this color is showing its true colors of how difficult that it is to get it to lay out properly, but and it also takes a lot. Anything that has a ton of pearl in it like this, it just takes a lot to cover. I actually had my local paint supply guy kind of put me together a formula for this thing, because this was a color that I got on clearance off of another store that I shop at sometimes. So it's kind of crazy, but you know, we sat in there for 3 hours. We found a chip that was super close. Turns out it's pretty much all pearls. There's no like coarse metallic or anything in it. And we were able to come up with a match that's pretty dang close if you were trying to do a side-by-side match. But of course, I still have half the original can. What I'm using this for as my underlayment coat. That way I can get some coverage before I'm actually spraying from the matched can. So that's kind of the strategy that I'm using. I don't think I was really gonna run out anyway, but I'm being safe by having this can that I got mixed as my under, you know, first 1 or 2 coats, and then I grabbed the actual matched can, spray from that one. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but it's always cool to paint some stuff. So this trim isn't too bad, but I will say, you know, you're gonna have to take your time with it. depending on how you decide to fasten the pieces, especially the bigger triangle pieces that go on the quarter panel, it's a little bit weird when you go to put that screw in from underneath. There's probably a better way to do it. You know, the two studs that go through the body that you put in first, that's something that you fiberglass in. Those hold really nice. But it's when you kind of follow it as it goes towards the door, you want to fasten it in a third place. And I used rivet nuts, but you know, they worked out pretty good. It's just getting things to sit right, as you'll see in some of these video clips. I'm kind of explaining how I had to etch into that panel a little bit, you know, just to get the screw to draw it properly. And I even had to touch up a little bit with some resin, but you know, it's all good. It worked out, but it's another thing you got to take your time with.
Now, one of the things I had to do for this area, just right up under here where this, you know, piece of trim is going to go on the driver's side, I had to basically kind of recess the screw in there, but at an angle. So you can see, like, you put the screw on, you see where it kind of nicks the edge, and use this type of bit. See, it's got like a flat bottom that still has some cutting blades on it. So you can cut by pushing in or going sideways with this. So what I do is I start back here where it's going to be the deepest, and then I angle this thing, you know, angle the tool where as you work this way, it's going to get a little shallower and shallower. And that's how I make it basically taper off, where the screw is going to set in here at a little bit more of an angle. So I'll show you. I've got the screw. This one should be pretty close to where I want it. I'll even touch up the paint a little bit. But see, the screw's going to set where the head of it kind of, yeah, it sits down in there. Very nice.
So this is definitely one of those places where I thought I had this fitted properly, and then, you know, after I paint, I go to put it on permanently. Once you shoot the rivet nut, what happens is it's gonna set at maybe a little bit of a different angle than when you used a self-tapping screw. So this is, you know, definitely, since you're getting to watch this video, this is something that you want to do before you paint this piece. I just kind of went back and touched it up with some of the base coat color. You never see it, but you know, if I end up respraying these, it'll all be clear coated and stuff. But yeah, definitely, you know, this is why I made the video. You guys get to see this stuff, do steps like this, get that rivet nut put in even before you paint the body. That way you can make sure all 3 points are holding this panel the way that it needs to be held before you paint.
See, that's basically what I'm going for, is I want the screw to you know, hold this thing in the right place, and it's got a little bit of angle to it, so it goes up into the rivet nut properly that's on the body of the car. Now I'm just going to touch up the paint a little bit in here, just so it's not this white bare fiberglass. I'm going to get some of my base coat color and just kind of touch it all in there, so it'll be good enough. Just wanted to show y'all something with this trim. When you're fitting this on, okay, and when I was installing, well, after I installed the stud in here that goes through and bolts in from the inside, before painting anything, okay, this is back when I was fitting these pieces together before the car was painted or the trim was painted. But I want to make sure that there's a gap. You can kind of see it basically between here, because I don't like things like that to rub. Now I know that it's going to be placed against here, and I know that it's going to be hitting somewhere, you know, up here, you know, where this touches the roof wing. That's fine. But places like this, you know, if I can avoid touching, I'd rather them, you know, have some kind of clearance. So just check out things like that whenever you're building this car. You know, think about when everything goes together, leave a little bit of gap if you can in some places, because the primer and paint is going to make it thicker, like here. And really, the gap actually seemed to get better. Let's see if we can get down here low enough. Almost. The gap seemed to get better whenever I actually tightened up this bolt. You know, at first it could kind of sit this way or down a little, but as soon as I put this bolt in and tighten it, it seemed to pull this in the right position where the gap is where I want it. And that's how I had it whenever I was fitting it too. You know, I had the bolt tightened up, or at least, you know, snug from the inside, the wing nut. So that way I knew exactly how it was gonna sit on.
And again, I've just got the little 832 studs that go through it, and then these are the wing nuts that I use. Also, I use a washer and a lock washer on the inside because, you know, I want the washer to provide some surface area. And then you got the little lock washer here that goes on it to keep it from coming loose. So there we go. We're gonna get this, I'm getting ready to bolt on this piece. It's just kind of sitting here. That one's been good, but I just got this one fitted properly and kind of adjusted the screw hole that I had to do. So this should be good to go here in a few minutes.
Well, at this point, I felt like it was appropriate to pull this thing out, take some pictures, and kind of see how it looks with all the new pieces on it. And it's always really cool to see it come together. So if you guys have lasted through this, I really appreciate it. I probably don't want to have 60 or 70 episodes of this, and I'm thinking we might be able to finish this build on episode 13, which is next, maybe 15, I don't know. But I also said that at episode 8, and here we are. So we'll see how it goes. And I guess this one is hitting about an hour and a half now, so I'm going to go ahead and end it. See you guys next time.
Alright, let's see if we can get some video back here. Yeah, visibility is insanely not good in this thing. I mean, the camera, it's like I'm easier driving through the camera than like actually looking through the windshield. It's pretty insane, but I'm going real slow in the neighborhood, so. That means I'm gonna need really good lights at night. I think a big part of it is cutting down the glare on the dash. So I'm gonna have to get rid of anything shiny on the dash. It's all gonna have to be either satin black or something cloth covered, which a lot of it is. I have leather that goes over most of the dash, so it should be alright. Yeah, the visibility will be a lot better without the glares for sure. Crazy. Wow. First drive in the Vaydor in 3, well almost, yeah, it's been 2.5